but it really was fantastic being able to post a number like that when I knew that I needed to do that.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Links for Life. This is going to be a fun one, kind of a little bit of a self-centered one, because this is almost going to be a therapy session for me with my good friend Robert Wrenn, PGA professional of many years, about 16 years on the PGA Tour.
Right, yeah.
And someone that I've always kind of looked up to, because I've always been passionate about golf and watched Robert's career over, many, many years, following as a big old fanboy for him. And he's had a phenomenal career, winner of the 1987 Buick Open. We'll talk about in a later episode of Links for Life his experience inside the ropes at the Masters. Just amazing years on the PGA Tour. And that's what's led to this episode, because there's something unique about the people who make it onto the PGA Tour that learn how to handle pressure, to thrive in pressure, whether it's the pressure of excelling at your best or avoiding your worst. And that's something unique that I find that, honestly, I don't think I do very well. I mean, I've had a few moments over the years, but far too few. And so I'm really kind of looking forward to the therapy session, Robert, that you're going to give me on that next time. And I'm going to make sure there's a next time that I'm trying to figure out how do I perform at my best, rather than always knowing I left the strokes out on the course because I wasn't handling pressure well. So I'm excited to hear what you've got to share, because I really don't have a clue how to do it. So Robert, welcome again to Links for Life. Been on in the past and heard a little bit more of the big story in past episodes, but I'm really looking forward to picking your brain on all this.
Oh, thanks, Tommy. I'm looking forward to sharing some time with you. And yeah, there are a few secrets out there, if you will, about some secret sauce about how to manage pressure. And love to talk through some of that with you.
Yeah. Well, there are different kinds of pressure, it seems like.
No doubt.
The pressure of making a cut is different than the pressure of being in a lead, which is different than the pressure of trying to protect a lead, which is different from being in a completely new, highly pressurized, environment. The first time someone plays in a competitive round of golf or something like that. It's all kind of this generic pressure, but it hits in different ways. So maybe just to start it off, out of those kind of different kinds, what did you find was the hardest kind of pressure?
Well, let's backtrack just a little bit, because really what the pressure is that you feel, it's all self-imposed, and most of it is really about being out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Whatever
that comfort zone is. If you're playing your quote unquote normal round of golf and you're out there and say you're a 5 handicap and you're plugging along and you're through 12 holes and you were 3 or 4 over par, you're kind of in your comfort zone score-wise.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, you make 2 or 3 birdies in a row. And now what does your brain do? Now your brain is thinking, I've tackled 2 or 3 more holes, but I've also done those with 2 or 3 birdies, and now my comfort zone is getting a little bit tighter, because instead of going towards my normal 76, 77, 78, I might have a shot at shooting par today.
Right.
And what does that look like? What does that feel like? All of a sudden, it's like, I made 3 birdies in a row. Is it going to be like your playing partners are looking at you and say, Tommy, did you know you've just birdied 3 holes in a row and now you're only one over par? You've got a shot at maybe birdieing the last couple of holes and shooting under par today. Or did they treat you like, you're through 8 innings as a big league pitcher and nobody wants to talk to you because you got a no-hitter going?
That's usually what I find. And of course, that silence gets loud.
Oh, yeah,
it's
very
like,
loud.
You know that they're not saying a word to you because they don't want to mess you up. And the very fact that they're doing that messes you up.
Right.
So,
one of my favorite stories about pressure is really about when Tom Watson was having a conversation and with Bob Rotella, the famous sports psychologist out of UVA, and I worked with Bob for a number of years as well. But he had this great conversation over breakfast one day, and this was Rotella's, might have been his first time really spending any time talking with Tom. And he said, so Tom, I've been dying to ask you this question. He said, what if you get off to a really poor start one day? You double bogey the first couple of holes. What are you going to tell yourself? And Tom says, well, that's pretty easy. I just tell myself, I've got my bad shots out of the way. I always make 4 or 5 birdies in a round. I'm going to come back and this is going to turn into a great day.
Wow.
And of course, Bob Rotella said, well, that begs the other question. What if you get off to a hot start and you birdie the first 4 holes? What are you going to tell yourself then? And he said, well, that's pretty easy too. And he said, well, you just told me that, that you got your bad shots out of the way over here. Now you've gotten all your good shots out of the way. He said, no. He said, I'm playing great golf today. I'm going to keep on making birdies. And he said, well, you can't really have it both ways. And he said, I most certainly can. It's my brain. I can think the way I want to.
Oh, gosh. Oh, I want to be Tom Watson.
Oh, my gosh. But I was fortunate. I was able to play quite a few rounds with Tom over the years competitively. And he was amazing the way that you could tell that he was thinking on the golf course because he always had the right mindset.
Yeah.
I can remember one year at the Memorial Tournament. Memorial was one of those golf courses that is always really, really difficult, very deep rough, and invariably you could get some cold, nasty weather up there because it was always around Memorial Day in Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
At Muirfield Village. And there was one particular year that it was super cold. It was like upper 30s when guys were teeing off and the wind was whipping through there, some snowflakes coming down periodically. And Tom was so juiced to get out on the golf course that day. And somebody said, why are you so excited about going out and play golf today? It's terrible out there. And he said, well, that's pretty easy. Already 2/3 of the field is quit.
Yeah.
And they haven't put a ball in the air yet. But I know that mentally they've checked out. And if I can stay focused today and put a good round together, I can add some separation between my score and the rest of the field. Sure enough, he went out and shot 68 that day.
Yeah.
And I think it was low round by 3 or 4 shots.
Well, that's always kind of the image I have of Tom Watson. He excelled at the British Open,
Right.
won it so many times. It's kind of like give him the worse the circumstances, the better he was going
No
to
doubt.
fare. Because it's just like, I am not intimidated in the slightest. I'm already ahead of everybody else.
Well, he, for many, many years, as you know, his caddy was Bruce Edwards. And Bruce Edwards ultimately passed away from ALS, but Bruce was just like Tom. He was always the guy seeing the glass half full and just a great guy to be around. But for a number of years there as well, before Tom was kind of at that stage in his career where he wasn't old enough to be on the Champions Tour yet, but he wasn't playing quite as much on the PGA Tour. So
Right.
Bruce had said, hey, I've had another player ask me if I can come to work for him for a while. And Tom said, who's that? And he said, Greg Norman. Well, that was a pretty good bag to get back in the day, and
Sure.
whether you like Greg or not, he was an unbelievable player for a 6 or 8 year stretch there, the best in the world. And so Tom said, if you've got a chance to go caddy for him, you should absolutely do it. So he went to caddy for him, and a couple of years later, he's back on Tom's bag now because Tom had started on the Champions Tour. And somebody from the media said, you just came off a few years with Greg Norman. How would you say the differences are between caddying for Tom and caddying for Greg? And he thought about it for a minute. He said, well, you know what? Greg would drive a ball down the middle of the fairway, and Greg was known as probably the best driver of the golf ball of all time. Hit it 9 miles down there and right down the middle. I mean, it was rare that he hit a really poor tee shot. And he said, if Greg goes down the fairway and sees his ball sitting in a divot, he would look at me and say, look at that. What a terrible break this is. Why do I deserve that? I hit the perfect tee shot down here, and now I've got this. I don't know how I'm going to do anything with this.
Yeah.
And they'd say, how would Tom approach that? And he said, Tom would get down there and look at it, and he'd look over at me and wink and say, this is going to be the greatest birdie you ever saw. But what a difference in mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see those unique people that can do exactly what you're talking about. And now it's Scotty Scheffler. And
Right.
you're seeing this extraordinary advantage he has, not necessarily with that same kind of flavor of positivity, but with a calm that he brings, a calm with the competitiveness that is, I don't think we've seen anything quite like his version of handling pressure. But it basically gives him a multiple stroke advantage off of every round versus those that just can't quite grasp that. It's amazing.
Yeah, and Scotty to me has sort of he's got the best of all worlds in that he's got that very quiet mind,
right?
But super, super competitive.
Yes.
But he approaches the game more with not the mindset of a Tiger Woods, where, who can forget the shot on the 72nd hole at the Canadian Open? I think it was in 2000 when Tiger Woods hit a 6-iron out of the fairway bunker over the lake to a back right pin placement that's only about 15 feet from the water, and flies it right over the flagstick out of a fairway bunker. Who even tries that shot?
Yeah.
And that's not something that Scotty might go at the green, but he's going to play it to the left side of the green and maybe try to cut it into the middle of the green, but give himself lots of room for error in there.
Right.
But
different style.
He approaches the game more like Jack Nicklaus did,
right?
And he's probably not going to shoot quite as many super low scores, 60, 61, 62. Because of that, if he does, it's because he's really got his putter working that day. But he's just not going to take that many chances. That's just his mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's different. So there are lots of different mindsets, but I don't want to really get away from, those are extraordinary examples, but to just get on the PGA Tour and have the times of success, even just to survive on the PGA Tour takes, an extraordinary mindset. And granted, there are just some gifted athletes that probably overcome the fact that they don't have a great mindset, but I don't think of you that way. And so I'm kind of curious, as you're so aware of the mindset, and I hear things like what Bob Rotella said, and I go, I totally get it, but I don't know how to convince myself of what I know, that, these are artificial things that we think about ourselves. How did you grow into, maybe is the way of saying, a certain kind of way of seeing and believing these things?
Yeah, and I think that's something that you continue to learn and you continue to kind of build on over time, because there were things that I learned after I'd been on tour for 4 or 5, 6 years that I didn't, like a light bulb goes off one day and you're like, you knucklehead, why didn't you think of this before?
Yeah.
But sometimes what clicks for me is not going to click for you.
Right.
But
because there's a personality that's
right,
a piece
right,
of it. Yeah.
Right. And just things that you feel that I don't and vice versa. But I would say the most important things that you can do, first of all, is do the basic things really, really well.
Okay.
And keep doing those better and better every day.
Like
so,
what are the what kind of basic things are you, what's in your mind when you say the basic things?
Well, number one would be, what is going to be your game plan for the golf course?
Okay.
How do you feel like you're playing? What type of shot shape are you playing that you feel comfortable with right now? And if I'm going out and I've got a competitive round that I'm going to play, how am I going to play the golf course today? Now, most people aren't privy to knowing where all the hole locations are going to be like they are on tour.
Right.
On the PGA Tour, you get a piece of paper on the first tee every day that shows exactly how many paces on the green and right and left it is, and the depth of the green. So you can look at your yardage book and know exactly where that hole location is. It's just over a ridge or just 5 yards over the front bunker, whatever it is.
Right.
You'll know which hole locations are going to set up really well for you that day. But you got to come with a plan. Even if you don't know the hole locations, you got to know that, on your home course, there are going to be certain holes that you are always going to feel more comfortable on than others.
Yeah.
And they're going to be what Johnny Miller would call your green light holes, the holes that you're going to tend to be a little bit more aggressive on, because you can always kind of count on hitting a decent tee shot there.
Right.
And set you up to be able to be a more aggressive second shot.
Yeah, and I think of, when I'm playing, I think on, a whole lot of holes where the pin is from the harder places to the less hard places is at least a half stroke, if not 3/4 or almost a full stroke. Some pins are almost inaccessible unless you're an extremely good golfer, and some you can go after, and it can be the same hole can have the impossible one versus the real. And so, not by any means at your level, but it's kind of like, the tee shot is going to be what the tee shot is, and it's going to leave you, if you hit it reasonably well, a certain shot. And then from there, it's red light, yellow, green, totally based on where the pin placement is. And you approach the hole differently.
Right.
So that's what I think of when I hear, know the course, your game plan.
As a case in point, say there's water to the right of the green and the hole is cut back right. So it's kind of over near the water, and you like to draw the ball.
Yeah.
So that is a red light to me. I am looking at that. Right. Every sound is blaring in your face. I mean, everything is saying, don't do it. Whatever you're thinking, don't do it.
Yeah.
This is one that if you can get away with it in the center of the green, that's a really good shot.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to try to hit this ball out over the lake and draw it into the pin.
Right.
The only time that I would even consider doing that is, hey, I'm a shot out of making the cut here, and this is my last hole, and I've got to get it close. And if I don't hit it over in that general area of the green, I've got no chance at making birdie, because from over here, I got to putt it up over this ridge. There's just no chance.
Yeah.
But that's slim and none.
Right.
But the reality is you have got to lay out each hole and figure out, all right, what is my game plan going to be?
Okay.
And it's funny though, Tommy, there've been some times that I've tried to go out, if I'm really struggling with my game, I'll go out and just see if I can hit 18 greens in regulation.
Just change your mindset.
Just change my mindset. I'm not going at any pin. unless it happens to be dead in the center of the green.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to hit every shot, including wedges, pitch shots, 5 irons, whatever it is, and try to hit it into the center of the green.
Don't even look at the flag.
Don't even look at the flag. If I hit it close, it's been, again, in the middle of the green, the whole location stuck in the middle of the green, or I pulled it or pushed it by accident and ended up going close.
Right.
But if I can hit 18 greens, I'm probably not going to shoot too bad a score. And invariably, it's some of the best golf I play is when I'm playing what Bob Rotella, go back to him again, Bob Rotella would say, have a conservative game plan, but with an aggressive swing. So I'm trying to hit it in the center of the green, but I'm trying to put a good full cut at it. I'm not trying to back off and guide it to the middle.
Right.
I'm freeing up my swing and just trying to let it rip at the middle of the green.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a sense, giving yourself mentally a lot of room for not playing your best golf.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, so, having a good game plan is paramount. You got to have that.
Yeah.
And then I think the second thing is every time you're over a shot, you have to have full commitment. I love when people say, Tommy, golf's 90% mental. Well, if you don't have 90% physical, it doesn't matter how much of the mental aspect of it that you got nailed down. I can have a perfect game plan, but if I have no idea where the golf ball is going to go, it really just doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
But assuming for your level of play, assuming that you're going to go out and, again, say you're a 5 handicap, 10 handicap, whatever it is, and you've kind of planned out what your round is going to look like, which holes I can be aggressive on, where I need to back off a little bit. All right, I've got the game plan in there. All right, how are you going to go out there now and execute and have a chance to be better than you normally are?
Yeah. How do you get the most out of whatever that skill level is?
Right.
And that's, to me, that's one side of it. And then the other side is, how do I keep from sabotaging a skill level that I do have simply because of getting tight in a situation?
Right.
So,
and they're really two sides of the same coin.
yeah, but I will say that for me, at least, I don't have as much problem with one side of the coin as the other. Mm-hmm. That is, if I'm taking that, Tom Watson scenario, if I start off with a couple of poor holes, I actually don't have that hard a time bringing it back to average. Mm-hmm. I, in a sense, loosen up a little bit. I know that I'm somewhat capable, and I find myself getting back to normal. Mm-hmm. But if I'm having a really good round, it is just the other side of the coin, but I experience it differently, which means that if I'm playing poorly, I end up average. If I'm playing well, I end up average. And it's totally exactly what my handicap shows. Yep. My scores are just so bunched in a middle because I find some way to get to a same range.
The reversion to the mean.
It is.
Yeah.
It's totally. And I can't find that switch to stay on.
Yeah.
Help me.
I was lucky because I felt like when I got it going, I never really had trouble keeping it going. And I think the biggest thing that I learned over time was learning how to execute I called it going into my bubble. Okay. And so it would be like, it would be like an igloo or a tent or something like that, where I would envision this as I get up to my ball. Say I'm right in the middle of the fairway, I'm 185 yards away, and I'm walking up to it, and from the time that I start really looking at my shot, I've sealed myself off from the world.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
So
Yeah.
what I'm really doing, I might watch a guy that's in my group, watch him hit a shot and somebody else hit a shot, and maybe we're waiting on the green. All right, now as I get up to my ball, I'm going into my bubble. So as I start to look at this, the first few things come to mind. What do I feel like here? It's 185 yards, but is there anything right away that grabs my attention that says, boy, this is a pretty easy shot. It's downwind. It's a little right to left. I'm hitting a draw. The pin is back left. There's no real trouble back there. All I've got to do is set this up in the middle of the green and hit my normal shot, and it should be close, because for this wind direction, texture of the greens right now, it ought to be a simple shot. I just need to go through my process.
Right.
So conversely, you might get up there and you say, okay, there's water to the right. The pin is on the right side, and I've got a distance here that's kind of in between.
I've got clubs.
Right. And I've got an angle here. The ball's below my feet, and I've got wind blowing hard left to right. And there's everything about this shot that makes me feel not very comfortable.
Yeah.
So how do I avoid screwing up this shot just because I've got this uncomfortable factor that's going on with it?
Yeah. And Pia Nilsson and Lynn Marriott talk about that as the think box. And I love it. Although the reality is the feel part of the think box is every bit as important as the think box.
Yeah.
And I love what you're saying, because the few times that I feel like I've had some success when things are going well, I find that I am doing a better job of creating a thicker bubble around the shot. I mean, you can't necessarily do that for 4 hours,
right?
But do you have that sense of, okay, I've been watching the other people. I am now in this. And when I can do that and kind of exercise, so to speak, where I am in the round and what my score is, then I still have a chance of hitting a really good quality shot.
Right.
If I'm not doing that, and if I'm hearing the voices, then I'm sunk.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's such a huge part of it, is being able to hear the voices.
Yeah.
What are the voices telling you? Because in the bubble, I've got a commitment line. And so I'm behind the ball, I'm looking at it, I'm assessing all kinds of information here. Once I've decided what kind of shot I'm going to play, what club I'm going to play, and then I'm ready to hit the shot, then I cross that commitment line. And what that commitment line means to me is, once I've crossed it, if I hear voices bouncing around inside my head, I've got to go back across the commitment line and get myself settled before I go back across again to actually hit the shot, to actually execute.
That takes some discipline.
Huge amount of discipline.
To back off. I mean, some people have a problem with that to an extreme, but I would say most people, their problem is they won't back off, and they crossed that think box into the play box, or that commitment line that you're talking about, and doubt enters in, and they just push through ineffectively with that.
How often do you feel yourself, and maybe not just yourself, but hear somebody else say, I don't know what I was thinking about on that shot.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I mean, I've been playing great, and all of a sudden I had this one shot I go blank on, but that's being able to listen to those voices. Probably the best that I was ever around for something like that. I did 7 years of being out on the golf course with the best players on the Champions Tour, doing the telecast.
Yeah.
And the best that I ever saw at that was Hale Irwin. And Hale Irwin, one year, I think Hale won 11 times on the Champions Tour in 1 year. it got to the point where the media, not just us, but the print media guys were saying, I don't even know what to say about this guy anymore. He's just so good and so far beyond anybody else out here right now. It's more of a story when he didn't win than when he did.
Yeah, and as I remember, he didn't have any like glaring thing like he was 50 yards longer than anybody, or he was just so good at everything almost in a boring way.
What he was so good at was understanding what he's not good at. If that makes sense. Because he was so good at hitting just, standard shots, just a little bit of a inside, little over the top, just a soft cut. He was so good at doing that. But what I discovered watching him play was that he rarely varied off of that. The only time that he would actually try to hit, say, a high draw was something which was not a comfortable shot for him to hit, it would be when he knew that he had to make something happen down the stretch, and there was a whole location somewhere that he just wasn't going to be able to get to it any other way.
Right.
But he was so committed over every shot, and you could tell when he got over the ball that he was ready to execute. He had crossed that commitment line, and he was all in.
I've talked about this with good friend Joel Suggs on some of an earlier episode. It's kind of the place of humility in golf. Humility understood as I know myself, I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at, and I will play golf with who I am.
Right.
And that again is that's kind of a unique skill. And it, as you say, it's probably something that you grow into.
Right. But I think, going back to the process, the most important thing in learning how to play great golf under pressure is being able to adhere to your process and execute through that process. Yeah. And, a couple of stories that come to mind. 1988, I was playing the Las Vegas Invitational, and I was coming to the 72nd hole at Las Vegas Country Club, and it's a par 5, 2 really good shots you could get home into, but there was a canal that was just in front of the green, and I had hit not a bad tee shot, but it was far enough left and far enough back that I didn't feel like it was in my best interest to try to go at the green in 2. So I laid it up, and I had 92 yards to the pin. And I can remember it like it's right here in this room. Yeah. And I went through that process of standing back, getting a feel for it, knowing exactly the number, exactly what the wind was doing. I knew what I wanted to do with the ball. I needed to land it 2 or 3 steps past the pin because it had a gentle slope that was coming back toward the water. I didn't want to put too much spin on the ball. And got fully committed, crossed my commitment line, got up and made a couple of what I call rehearsal swings, not practice swings, but rehearsal swings.
Right.
Because I was rehearsing exactly the feel that I wanted to have on that pitch.
Yeah.
And then I got over the shot and I replicated that exact feel, and I hit it to 2 feet and made birdie to get into the playoff.
Oh, wow.
But as I was over the pitch shot, though, you talk about the voices in your head. There were no voices at all. It was all just a perfect picture of what I wanted that shot to look like and feel like. Yeah. And all I did when I got over the ball was replicate that same feel.
Yeah, it is so cool because that's a memory here, a bunch of years later. That is
a couple.
It's very vivid. Yeah. And I want to go back because I think you hit something that this pressure is something that we feel anytime we get ourselves out of our comfort zone. And I think that so many people, and I've been guilty of this myself, expect to be able to perform outside of your comfort zone without putting yourself regularly into that position, choosing to go there, and even choosing to fail or allowing yourself to fail, knowing that if I fail enough, I'm going to learn and I'm actually going to expand my comfort zone.
Right.
And that's where I think this conversation and the game of golf offers so much opportunity, because if we can learn to embrace, to choose to put ourselves in that situation, then that same mindset carries outside of golf, where we now are willing to choose to put ourselves in life situations. We learn to excel and to thrive in the hard situations. But if we willingly choose to avoid that in golf, and I understand it's a game, so I'm maybe sounding a little bit judgmental, but that's why I love actually competing in golf, even at this age, because I know that challenge offers me so much upside that I carry into the rest of life. And that upside, part of that is I learned, I had a horrible tournament last year in a pressure situation. And the real learning was that life went on.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, oh, I thought this mattered a lot. It really doesn't. Nobody cares. And so you learn that in some sense, this pressure, as you said at the very beginning, is self-imposed. And that in and of itself makes us perform better. So there's so many life lessons, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, what we're trying to do is train our brain.
Yes, exactly. And we train our brain in golf. It can't help but leak into the others.
Absolutely.
And we can also train our brain in the opposite direction.
Right.
We can train our brain to fear.
Yeah, there was, you talk about pressure situations, probably the most pressurized situation a player can experience is going through qualifying school.
Yeah.
And trying to get out on the PGA Tour. Now, of course, they don't have it for the PGA Tour. You have to go through the qualifying school to get out on the Corn Ferry Tour. And then from there, you escalate up to the PGA Tour. But either way, there's tremendous amount of pressure there. And I can remember one year, the finals of the qualifying school were out in Palm Springs. And this particular golf course that they had us on, I was starting on the 10th hole. I think it was for the third round, and it was 6 rounds. It wasn't, they didn't cut it off after 4 like a PGA Tour event. It went 6 rounds. They really wanted to squeeze as much pressure into you as they could.
Oh, man. Just give them a couple pints of blood and get on with it. I mean,
Let
that
the
is insane.
bloodletting begin.
Yeah.
But we had to get out there, of course, a few minutes early because it's, 20 minutes away from the clubhouse.
Right.
And it happened to be one of those days in the desert that was cold and it was windy. I mean, it was, and I say cold, it was probably 50-ish degrees.
Yeah.
We're teeing off at 7:30 in the morning, and the first group we were, I think, the third group. So we had to get out. We got out there and the first group hadn't teed off yet. So it's cold and it's windy. And I'm like, why are we out here so early? I don't want, and the wind on this first hole that we're playing was straight in and off the right and blowing 25, 30 miles an hour. And again, it was not warm out there. There's a lake to the left. There's out of bounds to the right. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. First shot of the day.
So the first group tees off and they're out there, they kind of flared some stuff out there. And it was not a short hole we were starting on. It was probably 420, but this was before the hot golf balls that they've got now. But it was where, if I hit a good drive, I'd probably be hitting 5-iron into this hole.
Yeah. Today's 480.
Right.
Yeah.
With a good drive.
Right.
So first group gets out there, no bloodletting on that group. Well, the second group gets up there, and the very first guy, he hits a duck hook into the lake. And of course, we're watching this. And then he gets up and he hits his second tee shot. Now he's hitting his third shot, but the second tee shot because he hadn't crossed any land up there. So it's a second tee shot, flares it out of bounds to the right.
In Q school.
Gets up there and hits another tee shot into the lake. He ends up making a 13 on the hole.
Oh, my
And we're in the
gosh.
group behind watching all this. And I kind of hit a squirt flare out there and hit it up short of the green in two. And I'm like, man, I just want to get off this hole and kind of get into the round. Well, at that particular point, they blew the siren and called off the round because there was a sandstorm moving in. So it washed out that whole round, and that guy that made the 13, his 13 didn't count. So he got to come back out the next day. And,
Oh,
of
my
course, the
gosh.
next day, weather was perfect, and he piped one down the middle. But it just goes to show how in pressure situations like that, you can get in your own head. And he's probably on that first tee, as we were, thinking, how am I going to get a golf ball somewhere out there in
Yeah.
grass? I don't care if it's in the rough. I just
Yeah.
want to keep it in grass.
Sometimes the fairway looks like a bowling alley.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With no gutters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But, as I look back on that experience, though, it goes right back to what we were talking about a minute ago. It's about going into that bubble and executing through your process. The more, and talk about getting comfortable. How do we avoid being uncomfortable? We get more and more comfortable with our process.
Right.
So
Yes,
if we get really good at visualizing and feeling and seeing and listening to the voices, and then we get really good at commitment, and then we get really good at rehearsal swings, and then we get really good at just the execution of a repetition of the rehearsal swing.
Yeah.
That's when we hit that shot and we go, that's what it's supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
And I did everything I should have done on that shot.
Yeah.
Now you've got a chance to repeat that again
Right.
and get better and better and better at it.
That's so good. It is a real training of the mind. But I do think that the little bit of success that I've had is when I hyper focus on process, so that I have the process as the means by which I just turn down the dial on what I'm feeling. Kind of like, okay, I can feel, as much nerves as possible, when I'm in the think box and everything. And I stay there until I can kind of just turn it off. And then I just go blank
Yeah.
in a sense.
Yep.
And just do at least what I'm capable of
Right.
doing.
And I think a lot of times too, when we have a hard time turning down the volume on the voices in our head, I think a really, really important thing to do is remember to breathe
Yeah.
and make it really and truly just repetition of bringing
Yeah.
the breath down,
Yes.
helping that to really focus on inhale deeply and exhale and take twice as long on the exhale.
Yeah.
Inhale deeply, twice as long on the exhale, to the point where you realize, okay, because of that, now my heart rate is measured again. It's not beating out of my chest.
Yeah.
And now I've got a chance at actually executing the way that I know that I should.
Yeah. That's something, it's something to really work on, something that I battle. We've talked about it is, I've got a tremor that I inherited, and in pressure situations, it can get pretty extreme. And the only way I have a chance in that is to take that extra time, which is hard to do because people are waiting
Sure.
on you. It kind of gets obvious, but take that extra time
When
to take
you get
those.
self-conscious of it
Oh,
too.
oh, yeah.
Or big time voices beating in your head.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
But so you kind of have to be almost brave to say, you know what? I am nervous, and I'm going to take some really obvious long breaths, and I might take, even twice as long, but I'm not going to step up for me to hit that putt until it's okay with that. And how many times I've not done that, I've just gone on, and it rarely turns out well.
Right. I'll make up my time walking from this green to the next tee, but I'm going to take my time when I'm on this green. I want to make sure that I'm committed and that I'm ready.
Which usually the tendency is to get it over with.
Yep.
Just get it over with. I don't care whether I make it or not. I just want to leave.
Yeah.
On this. So,
one other trick, and I want to share this with you because it's one thing that I've found that it's helped me a lot. It's not so much about, your score or, the round as a whole, but it's the odd shot here and there that you really struggle with.
Yes.
I remember in college, there was a golf course in Greensboro by the name of the Cardinal. And the Cardinal, the first hole was an elevated tee, which for a lot of people, an elevated tee is nice if there's plenty of room to hit it into, because an elevated tee means the ball is going to stay in the air a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And so if it's tight, that little bit longer could make it go out of bounds a little bit quicker. But this particular hole had out of bounds to the right. It was probably played about a club downhill, and there was a creek off to the left. And it was a hole that was probably, if I hit driver, I'd hit a wedge in, but there was really nowhere to fit a driver out there.
Right.
And if I hit a 3-wood and played safe up to the right, well, there were these trees that sort of encroached on the right, so you kind of had to hug the left. It was a really uncomfortable tee shot, especially because it was the first hole of the day.
Oh, wow.
And every time I played that hole, I seemed to hit it into trouble until one day it was like I had this epiphany. I thought, why am I looking at the trouble? Look up above the trouble. And so I got on that first tee. I went over before the round started. I went over the first tee and just stood there and looked. And it's like, I can look at the very top of that tree over there. I can look at a cloud, as long as the cloud isn't going fast forward. But I can look up there and visualize my shot going against that canvas up there, as opposed to down here where I see a creek, I see out of bounds, I see trees, I see all kinds of stuff that's going on inside of my head. Don't hit it there. Don't hit it over there. What club are you going to hit? You can hit a 3-iron? No, that's not enough club. Then you've got 5-iron in. This is small green. And, next thing you know, there are all these voices in your head, and there's no way to stop it because you just don't know how you can stop it and still execute the way that you have to.
Yeah. You have to change the track.
But as soon as I changed the track.
That's great.
And
love
that same hole came to mind when I used to play the 17th hole at Hartford at the TPC there. 17th hole, it's an elevated tee, water to the right, big hill to the left. It had gnarly rough on it. So if you hit it left, you were probably chipping down to the fairway so that you could then go for the green. But I hit a couple of poor tee shots there one year, and I'm like, I got to go back to Greensboro on this, and I've got to find a target way up high here. And then it was all of a sudden like, this hole was not a problem anymore. 18th hole at TPC at Jacksonville, same thing.
Yeah.
Water all down the left and trouble over to the right. But if you look up where the trouble isn't and paint your picture of the shot you're going to hit against that canvas, then you've got a really good chance at quieting down those voices.
That's a great tip, because we all have, particularly at our home courses, that one hole that we just can't see a good shot.
Right.
And it may not even be that hard a one, but we just have, memories or whatever. And the minute you can't see it, your body can't deliver the shot. And so that's a great tip to kind of just look at a different spot.
And I think that's one reason that Pete Dye was always so diabolical with his designs was he put so much stuff down at, face level that was
Yeah.
very difficult to look at because it just looked like trouble was everywhere.
Yeah.
But if you could look up and, look where the pin is or look where the fairway is, now look up and see what you want to paint that shot against. You're not going to be painting it against the trouble. You're going to be looking up here where it's wide open.
Yeah. That's great.
Then you can free it up.
Do you remember a moment you felt the most pressure?
Probably, it goes back to qualifying school again.
Yeah.
I can remember, and it goes back to California. I was actually, the qualifying school I'm thinking of that was more so than that was down at a place called Bear Lakes down in West Palm Beach.
Okay.
And it was the last time I ever went through qualifying school. And
How many times did you go through?
Oh, about 100.
It feels like it, at least.
There were some guys. It was funny. There were some guys that I would see there with regularity, and we used to call it the fall barbecue.
Oh gosh,
for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But after you'd been through 3 or 4 of the qualifying schools, it got to be not that there was less pressure. You just understood how to manage it better. But I think all in, I went to qualifying school 8 or 9 times.
Wow.
I went through it 3 times before I made it through the first time.
Okay. All right.
So, but this particular qualifying school down at Bear Lakes, I had told my wife, Kathy, I said, if I don't make it through this time, I'm going to move on and I'm going to, do television if they'll have me. And I'm tired of fighting the battle. And so I went out the last day and I was probably 3 or 4 shots out of the top. I think at that time they took the top 50. And the higher that you finished, of course, the more tournaments that you would get into. And, I was able to get my mind right the last day and I shot 64.
Wow.
But just knowing that, that's God up there telling me that he feels like, you know what, you have put the work in and I want to see you play another year out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, all I know is for whatever reason, I felt like a hand was kind of guiding me around that day. And I hit some great shots when I needed to, made some great putts when I needed to. But I can remember though, the very last hole, I ended up only making it, I think by 3 shots, but the last hole was over water and I was like 190 out into the wind over the water. And I'm like, this you didn't have all the electronics like you do at a qualifying school like you do now. So I kind of thought that I was pretty close, but I thought I might be in. If I make par here, I feel pretty good about it. But this was far from an easy shot. And as it was, I hit a 4-iron and flushed it and hit it about 20 feet behind the hole. But, if I hit that in the water, I might not have made it.
Yeah. That's certainly what your mind was telling you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I love about this conversation is I really think there is a tremendous value in choosing and walking into pressure. And I say that as someone certainly in my golfing career, amateur, whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even call it that. But in my golfing life, I don't think I've necessarily performed that well. I've had moments, but not that many.
Yeah.
But the value is, I think, the courage that builds up simply by choosing to do it, even if you don't do it well. And I don't feel like I've necessarily done it that well, but I feel like I have become a stronger person simply by making that choice to walk into a hard place. And that has, I think, made, an immense difference in other areas of life of choosing to say yes to something hard that I didn't know whether I would do well, like speaking engagements that I've, had on many occasions that were very, very intimidating, that it would have been easier to say, why would I put myself through that?
Right.
Why would I put myself through it? Well, by putting yourself through it, whether you do well or not, you're stronger. And then eventually you become that stronger person. And that's like just so much what you said about training your brain. So it encouraged me to say, you know what, even this next year, I want to continue to try to do it. My top end is I'm going to keep on trying to qualify for that state senior amateur. I haven't made it, but why not?
Why not?
Why not? It's a game. It's not life or death, and I can enjoy it. I can still enjoy it, even though it creates a lot of nerves. So why not?
Well, there's something about competing that makes us want to achieve something that we haven't achieved before.
Yes.
And, and even if we have, to be able to do it again and again, like go out and shoot, 70 when you need it in a qualifying.
Right.
And then you realize, you know what? I can do that.
Yes.
I did do that.
Yeah.
And if I can shoot 70, maybe I can shoot 68.
Right.
Because I know the process that I went through on this one, the level of commitment that I had with every shot, the level of focus that I had, the rehearsal swings. I go back to that, and I helped to coach a high school team.
Yeah.
And I tell the guys all the time, I said, one of the most important things that you can do about your practice for your game has nothing to do with swinging a golf club. It's all about reflecting on the round that you just played.
Yeah.
Take 15 minutes at the end of a round and sit down quietly and go through your round shot by shot. Was I committed? Did I feel the shots? Were the voices pinging in my head, or did I feel confident and committed to those shots?
Yeah, I remember our first podcast episode that we did together. We ended up going down that track and talking about that reflecting process. And I am such a huge proponent of doing that with our lives. And if you learn to do that, there's so much value, even in the reflecting on what didn't go well.
Right.
And the feelings that didn't go well. And you learn, I can live with not doing everything well. So, that is.
I always feel like I struggle more when I react instead of reflect.
Yeah. Yeah. And those on the surface may not seem all that different, but they're a world of difference. Right. So
no doubt.
Well, this is great. It encourages me, to really, we're entering into the golf season now, and it encouraged me to say, oh man, I'm really excited about it. And, one of the things I've heard kind of about pressure is that, the very word pressure is just a negative spin on excitement.
Yep.
It's the same emotion. So anyway, I get excited about this, and that's helpful. I mean, that day, I can't imagine what that felt like to walk out of that Q school, having walked into that round 3 strokes behind, having not only that year ahead, but having set in your mind that this is it, and to put up a 64, and how you must have felt like walking off that green. That must have been one of the highs of certainly the golfing life.
It absolutely was. And, the interesting thing is all it did is give you the opportunity to go beat your head against a wall again.
Yeah,
But it really was fantastic. It was one of the great days of my professional golf career, being able to post a number like that when I knew that I needed to do that.
Yeah, and you've had many of those, winning the Buick Open, playing at the Masters, and so many of them that I don't know about. And that's the joy of golf, and it's the joy of putting yourself, into that place. And I think there's just, a tremendous positive opportunities by choosing to do that, even if we only succeed 1 in 10 times.
Right. Right.
It's totally worth it.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
well, this has been a great conversation. It really gets me excited about things. I love hearing the stories. There were so many glory years in golf, but when you were playing was just so fun. I've been passionate about golf for all these years, so it's fun to share those stories together. I appreciate it a ton.
Oh, absolutely. I do. We could keep on going.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do another episode coming up because my favorite sporting event of all times is the Masters, and I remember your days in this. So we'll talk about in another podcast episode to come soon, Masters Week, what it's like to be inside the ropes at the Masters. So look forward to that conversation.
Me as well.
Yeah, thanks for joining on this
Tommy.
episode. Share this fun one for everybody to remember together. So thanks so much for being a part of this, and we'll see you next week.